With only 3 games remaining in the regular season, the Denver Nuggets have gone out and fired their longtime head coach, Michael Malone. And this comes as the Nuggets are sitting 15 games above 500 and 4th in the Western Conference, with the potential to fall all the way down to the 8th seed if they are unable to claw out some wins in the few games that they have left. And the question that everybody's asking is why fire him and why now? And while I would normally say that a move like this is highly unusual and wouldn't happen in any other circumstance, we did just see the Memphis Grizzlies do the exact same thing. The Grizzlies are another team who is looking to make a deep playoff run. They're set to be in the playoffs, probably avoid the play-in with the way things are going. However, they fired Taylor Jenkins maybe 10 games before the season ended. And if you're a coach in the NBA, you have to fear for your job. I mean, since 2019, 4 out of the last 6 coaches to win a championship have all been fired. Nick Nurse getting fired 4 years after he won with the Toronto Raptors. That was pretty shocking. Then you also have Frank Vogel getting fired after he won a championship with the Los Angeles Lakers. His leash was even shorter. He got fired after 2 years. Then Mike Budenholzer with the Milwaukee Bucks, who after winning a championship in 2021 ended up getting fired mid-season a little over a year ago. And the only coaches to be an exception to this are, of course, Steve Kerr, who ended up winning a championship in 2022 and also has 3 other rings to his name as a coach, and Joe Mazzulla, who led the Boston Celtics to a championship just last season. But after Michael Malone's firing, Joe Mazzulla came out and told the media this.
I mean, that's part of what motivates me, but I wake up every day saying this could be my last day, and that's not, it's just, you have to have that type of perspective because it gives you gratitude. It also keeps you, hungry. It works, and, so every day I remind myself of my own mortality, and I think that's what kind of keeps me in a perspective and, and a gratitude of the opportunity that you have.
Now, of course, Joe Mazzulla can be a bit dramatic with his words from time to time, but in all honesty, he has every right to be afraid. Because if you're a coach in the NBA, you're never safe. It doesn't matter what you accomplish or how long you've been there. If ownership feels like your time is done, then that is all it takes. And that's what happened here. Josh Kroenke, the owner of the Denver Nuggets, felt like Michael Malone's time with the organization had run its course, which I don't buy as a valid reason. And even if that was the case, the manner in which they fired Michael Malone was highly disrespectful. This is the winningest coach in franchise history. He's been with the organization for 10 years, and he's taken them to 6 straight playoff appearances, 7 if you include this season. And again, he brought the team their only championship in franchise history. Sure, did it help that he had Nikola Jokic on the roster throughout his entire tenure? Maybe that was a part of it. But still, there was no other coach that could have done what Michael Malone's done with the Denver Nuggets. He changed the culture for that franchise. And I'll take a deeper dive into the reasons behind Michael Malone's firing in a second, but for right now, I want to remind you guys to slow down, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 10,000, and every subscription is greatly appreciated, so please subscribe. Alright, now let's get back to talking about the Nuggets here. Michael Malone wasn't the only person fired on Tuesday, because the Nuggets general manager, Calvin Booth, was also fired. And if you watched any sports media at all over these past few days, you would know that Michael Malone and Calvin Booth hated each other. There was a lot of friction there, and ownership knew this, and heading into the offseason, they planned to let go of one or even both of them. But instead, ownership, Josh Kroenke, decided to just kind of get that out of the way now, right? Because Josh Kroenke believed we're heading down a road that would lead to an early playoff exit. And so he thought that the only way to get this team back on track was to give them something to strengthen their bond over, even if it meant firing their head coach. Now, the reason that Michael Malone and Calvin Booth didn't see eye to eye all came down to how they viewed roster construction, because Michael Malone was in favor of going with veterans. He wanted to succeed with older players that would play better alongside Nikola Jokic, while Calvin Booth sought younger talent mainly through the NBA draft. And these two ideas couldn't be further from each other. And when a general manager and a head coach can't agree on something as basic as to how to build your team going forward, then they weren't going to get along with anything else, and that's pretty much what happened there. And that resentment between the two had been building up for years, so Josh Kroenke decided to kick them both out of the door. Now, this wasn't the only reason that Michael Malone was fired. Another large piece to the puzzle was the fact that players just weren't listening to him anymore. He had been with the franchise for a long time, and sure, he had brought the team plenty of success, but he didn't have the players on his side. If you listened, really listened to what Michael Malone had been saying in recent post-game interviews, you'd know that a move like this was bound to happen. What really caught the rest of the league off guard was the timing of it all. Now, Michael Malone isn't the type of coach to shy away from criticizing his players, especially publicly. And after one of the most embarrassing losses of the season to the Portland Trail Blazers, this is what Michael Malone had to say.
The guys that are full won't hear it. You know, they'll say coach is tripping. And the guys that maybe do really care will, because they're not going to go back and watch their minutes, because nobody watches their minutes. Nobody watches film. I said, if somebody disagrees with me, please speak up. And nobody said a word.
Now, if Michael Malone is telling the media that none of his players are watching film, then it's clear that he has no respect in that locker room. And you can see it with the way that this team plays defense. Defense has been their biggest weakness all season, because while they rank 4th in offensive rating, they rank 21st when it comes to defense. And the only reason the Nuggets have managed to avoid negative headlines about their defensive play all year is because Nikola Jokic does such a good job at masking their flaws. Now, not only does this team have bad effort defensively, they also have really bad personnel. And maybe you could get away with one of these things in the NBA. But when you have both of these issues, it is just a recipe for disaster. Now, it wasn't just a few extra plays here or there, or a lack of rotations. It wasn't just the hustle stuff. It was the mental focus of knowing who you're guarding, when you're guarding them, how you should close out, rotate, and attack the screen. None of this was being communicated properly. Maybe it was getting to them during practice, but when game time came around, none of the players knew where they were supposed to be defensively, and it was happening every single game. The reason Nikola Jokic was so frustrated on the bench just a week ago is because he had noticed these issues throughout the entire season, and they had tried to correct them, but it doesn't seem to matter. And it was only a matter of time before the 7-time All-Star, 3-time MVP, and 1-time Finals MVP said enough was enough and put his foot down. Because in the losses leading up to Michael Malone's firing, Nikola Jokic was playing some of the best basketball of his life. In an overtime loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves, Nikola Jokic goes out and scores 61 points, has 10 rebounds and 10 assists while shooting 62% from the field. He had a 60-point triple-double, and the Nuggets lost that game. And then a few days later, they go and they play the Golden State Warriors, another game where Nikola Jokic nearly has another triple-double, this time scoring 33 points, and they still lose. And the game after that, they play the Indiana Pacers, where Nikola Jokic has a 41-point triple-double. He is doing everything he possibly can for this team, and they lose. All of them ending with losses. Nikola Jokic can only push himself so far with the current talent surrounding him. It's clear that the supporting cast around Jokic just isn't good enough, so don't expect them to go out and win a championship this season. However, in the one game that they did play after firing Michael Malone, they did end up beating the Sacramento Kings, and they do have another game upcoming against the Memphis Grizzlies, biggest game of the year. And if they're able to win that, then they can avoid the play-in. These last two games against the Grizzlies and Rockets will determine where the Nuggets fit into this playoffs and how far of a run they're going to be able to make with their new interim head coach in David Adelman. But I think I've said everything I've wanted to in this video, so I'll catch y'all later. Much love. Deuces. My only regret was too young for Lisa Bonet. My only regret was too young for Nia Long.